the College of Community College student.
I know you. Oh, you know.
I'm Trent McGee, representing Red.
I'm Trenton Kennedy. I'm here serving ex officio and kind of the note taker and that type of thing.
He's also student body vice president.
Yeah.
So.
That's true.
And
I want to introduce you as Macy. Student wise joining us. Macy, can you hear us okay?
yeah.
Excellent. Macy's joining us from Salina. So, and I'm Jack Ayers, speaker of the Student Senate, co-chair of this committee with Jessica.
And Jack and Jessica, Dawn knows Ethan and I.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But some of these other people might not know
I'm
us. I mean, I know we're very famous, but.
Well, you're not.
Yeah, he is.
Infamous.
My name's April Mason, I serve as the provost.
Ethan Erickson, I work in the K-State budget office. I'm actually technically sitting in for Cindy Bontrager, the vice president for administration and finance.
And before we get started, Trent McGee very helpfully pointed out that if you have your laptop with you, or if you are interested in looking at it before or after Dean Boggs' presentation, there are notes about the College of Agriculture's original fee on page 66 of the orientation packet, and the notes of the discussion on page 83. If you want to jot that down, maybe you don't need to be referencing it like during the presentation if you just want to be paying attention, but it's after the presentation. Oh, well, that's perfect. But great.
And then Dean Boggs, I was wondering if where you were planning on speaking from. I've got a camera turned here so Macy can see you presenting, but I understand if you want to stay seated, whichever.
It doesn't matter to me. I can move over by Drew too if you prefer that.
So, yeah. Either way, Macy, can you see okay?
If she can hear me, I'm not much to look at.
Cool.
She might be just better off this way. So.
Yeah, I can see everyone.
Okay, very well. And I thought you'd be Uncle Drew by now.
Oh, yeah.
You need to introduce yourself. Well, thank you for this opportunity. We instituted our fee 3 years ago, and I did include the original proposal because I feel like we've really fulfilled what we had proposed there, because ours was strictly out of necessity. Our college, for those of you who aren't aware, since 2007, from 2007 to 2014, we basically grew by 50%, which is 1,000 students, 2,000 to 3,000 students, whatever. We did not receive any additional teaching resources to go along with that at that time. And so as we looked at what we were going to do and facing potential budget cuts in the future, we could see everybody could see the handwriting on the wall with what was going on with the tax situation and things, that we needed to act, or we needed to change basically our methods of instruction and somewhat what we felt to be the quality of our program. So we proposed, I proposed to the dean that I didn't see a way to maintain the quality of our program without going to some type of a fee. We looked at a fee that we think is very modest at $20 per credit hour for credits in our college, nearly every credit hour. There's a few exceptions. But with most of that money, 80% of it going directly to the departments to be spent as that department felt would be in the best interest of the students in that department for that specific program. We took that first to our Ag Student Senators, discussed it with them, then we went to our Ag Student Council, discussed it with them, and then we had an open forum for any student in the college, graduate, and this goes on graduate students as well as undergraduate students. So we did vet this with our students. Every group we talked to was unanimous, basically, that we don't want our fees to go up, but we don't want to give up the quality of our education. They felt the fee was minor compared to what losing quality of their education might be. So that's how we proceeded. As you would see in the original proposal, what we do is 20% goes to 80% goes to the department. The departments are each instructed to develop some type of an advisory committee of students. They've used different ways to do that. Obviously, animal science with 1,000 or 1,200 students, I guess we put animal and food science together, has a whole different structure than AgCom 60 students. But they each have a group that they work with and have done different things with those dollars. Some of it was pretty well assigned in terms of permanent dollars, positions, and that type of thing in the very first go around, so they haven't had quite as much follow-up as others. Others meet, some of them every semester, others once a year or whatever. So that's been pretty much how it's worked in our college. I didn't know how much detail, Jessica, you really wanted on this. So let me just run through just over, kind of highlights of what the different departments have done, because they've all done just a little bit different things. Animal sciences and food science, and again, they tried to make sure that it got proportionally to the different groups. And with that, they've created GTA positions to be able to continue to offer more sections of laboratories, providing more access to students, making sure people can finish in 4 years. That's a very big issue with us. We need students not to be held back by not having enough sections. They created 2 teaching associate positions. They do a lot of laboratories. And so these teaching associates may not be lead instructors on classes all the time, but they do a bulk of the work in setting up laboratories, providing assistance so faculty can be productive as researchers, but still provide adequate time and necessity for their laboratories. Probably the largest use of the dollars in animal science has gone to the animal units that are located north of town. 2 of those units specifically, the equine unit and the sheep and goat center. Many of the units out there, all of them have some research function, but many of them generate a considerable enough of a cash flow through marketing the products, the milk, from the dairy, the beef from the feedlot, and that type of thing. And anyone that's ever owned a horse knows you don't have that type of product. The primary product you have would be riding, riding classes, that type of thing. It's for pleasure typically and such. Those that have businesses, they sell riding lessons. They do this type of thing. That's not a marketable product for us in our current environment, unless a lot of schools have gone to a very substantial equestrian fee for any equine course where there's individual work with a specific horse. They have assigned a fairly large fee for that class. We have not ever done that. We've looked at it, but we've never done that. So a bulk of the fees in animal science have gone to that. Plus, they made several classroom improvements. If you've ever been in Weber Hall or Call Hall, you know that that's a never-ending process. So that would be the primary thing they've done. Their group it's been a committee of the club officers. They have, you all know, they have lots of clubs in animal science. So when they bring all those club officers together, including grad students. Horticulture, park management, and wildlife outdoor enterprise management, all in the horticulture and natural resources department. Again, student committee representing all those different majors. They've used theirs a lot for GTAs. The floral design instructor is one that we've struggled with, trying to faculty member retired and not a core area of the faculty to fill a full faculty position with, but man, it's a popular course. And so we backfilled that using student fee dollars so we can continue to offer a very popular course both in our college and probably more so outside of our college. Classroom technology, greenhouse equipment and improvements. If you've ever been in Throckmorton Hall, the lobby area down there that's horticulture's baby. It's got a living wall now. If you've ever not been in there, you need to go see the living wall. It's a pretty cool deal and such. So that was all done with those kind of dollars as well. And the latest thing they're working on right now is two-way audio-video conferencing with Olathe. We have faculty in horticulture stationed in Olathe, and we have grad students in Olathe. So we have coursework going back and forth, and so they wanted to upgrade that technology so they could do a better job of that teaching. Entomology. Entomology does not have an undergrad program. They do have a minor, but they also have a very vibrant graduate program. And they have an entomology students club, the Pocono Club. I think I said that right. But they basically manage those dollars. If the department wants to spend money, they go ask the student club. So they meet monthly about this. They bought supplies for classroom instruction. They improved the microscopes, projectors for the teaching laboratories. They voted that they would support student travel for professional development if it included learning more about being a better teacher. So they have really tried to utilize their dollars to help the undergraduates that take the courses in their department, even though students haven't necessarily been at the table with those dollars. Agronomy, again, all these groups are using their club leadership pretty exclusively. Renovations to the teaching greenhouse, the soils teaching laboratory, and they have a student reading room where students, you can always find students in there studying. A lot of GTA support for additional sections, but also they've set up fairly specific tutoring for their classes using their GTAs and dollars from these fees for that. They support maintenance and operation of the departmental vans. A lot of labs again in agronomy. Well, those labs are not on campus, so we get students out to those labs out of the university farms, and so they do put a lot of miles on vans, and again, it's specifically for benefit of students. And then have used some of it partially for salary support for their academic coordinator, and then also some of the teaching faculty lines to keep those. They make sure they had enough faculty lines. Ag Econ, they made the decision early on. The biggest thing they needed was an additional faculty person, so they hired another faculty member. So that was a big chunk of their line, their fee money going in. They've also had quite a bit of GTA support, and they've done some renovations to their student area, the graduate student area especially. Very nice now. If you've never been to fourth floor waters, you missed it before it became pretty nice now. It's kind of a dungeon. Green Sciences, this one I would say is probably the biggest stumbling block we've had as far as student involvement. The department head at the time when this started told me he worked with students. I'm not sure he did or not, but basically it's been supporting it goes on 3 different instructors to allow them to have 3 instructors, 1 for each of their major areas as opposed to just 2. The new department head, they will be having a meeting probably this next week. So, you know, I had a long talk. And so, but that one is probably one, again, it's pretty well tied up unless, you know, students discuss and convince them to do other things. Our Ag Communications and Education group, renovation of an old classroom space in Umberger Hall up on 3rd floor. Their teaching space was very nasty, and it is very nice now. Kate can probably attest to that.
It's lovely.
What's that?
It's lovely
It's
now.
very nice. GTA offering additional sections, replacing the cameras, video equipment, all the technology that communication students need to be current when they go out into the field. Supported ag education students participating in the National FFA Convention, which is kind of the mecca for ag ed teachers. Replaced computers, monitors, furniture for graduate students, and most recently they're buying iPads. A lot of secondary education work being done with iPads now, so they've purchased iPads. So as their ag ed students go into their student teaching roles, as well as other classroom visit type roles, they have iPads that they take with them and get what they need and bring back. So using in that. And our final one is Plant Path, again, similar to entomology. An undergrad, minor, and then primarily graduate programs. They don't generate a lot of. They generate a lot of research dollars. They don't generate a lot of credit hours, so they don't have a real big amount of money here. But what they've had or been used for GTA positions to help support the service courses they teach. Some new computers and furniture in the grad offices, and upgraded their department common areas. That would leave the 20% that's in the College of Agriculture. We aggregate that 20%, and I work with the student senators and some of our other student leadership as we do that. We have not done much with it this year until Topeka does something. Part of what we can use fees for are offset things in the middle of the year like we might get right now. I've been able to manage our budget using some other dollars. The last 2 cuts that we've had, we have not had to bother the departments about returning dollars to the college. I've been able to cover that. I like that. I want them to implement their dollars that they have, and so they do that. And so we've not done that. Last year, all of our dollars at the college level went to GTAs. That's an area that over the years, as budget cuts came along, department heads, many of them gone now, GRA and GTA lines get a lot easier to cut than faculty lines, let's be very honest. And so those have been places we've tried to backfill. And again, that's what lets us offer more sections and have adequate number of sections for it. So that's kind of where we've been right now, and at this point in time, and I feel like it's working. It's a little over 8% of our College of Agriculture budget. If it doesn't continue, we will be back to, I'm not sure what we'll do as far as quality program. We will not be offering as many hands-on application-based learning opportunities for our students, and that's kind of a hallmark in our college. So I'd answer any questions that anyone might have. try to answer any questions anymore, except you. So,
Good, you didn't say me. 8% of the college what budget? Instructional
budget. We're around $11 million. This is about $900,000. And on the second page of that, I wasn't sure exactly what you wanted for budget, so this is just kind of the breakout of what each department gets. You can see animal science. They're basically 40% of our student numbers, and 30% of our students credit hours generated. And down the plant path, it's a pretty small number there. So just give you some idea of where those dollars are going.
I got a quick question. I was looking at the 20% that is used for the college bag. I know you said that that money has been able to be used when there has been state cuts or callbacks in the middle of the year, kind of like you
I haven't
said.
had these. I've had other dollars
Okay, gotcha.
that I don't have right now. So
That's what you're
I'm just kind of waiting. I mean, we'll spend it
Gotcha.
when the year's over.
And so when those, that would otherwise go to GTA and tuition.
We'll have, actually, what I'm hoping to do, I think we've aggregated enough now. My next proposal to our students will be that we look at instituting a mentoring program such as they have in business and community ecology.
Gotcha.
Something that our Dean's Advisory Council has visited with us about. We have not felt we had the resources to do that. This, I think, our numbers have stabilized. I mean, when you have that much growth, you get nervous. Okay, so everything cycles, but we're pretty well plateaued now, and so I'm feeling much more confident. And since I'm going to retire in 2 years, I think we got enough to get through 2 years. And so that's we're actually looking at something like that. I don't know if our students may have other preferences for it, but I'll work with that group.
Gotcha.
That's one I'm ready to propose that we might do with it. But GTAs has been a big area.
Gotcha. So like that 177, that's when you say GTAs, it's just like tuition waivers to pay those,
No,
to pay those GTAs, or
that would be the actual, be the GTA plus the waivers.
I see
It'd be
what
the
you're saying.
stipend plus the waiver.
Okay.
Yeah, for GTAs, I have to pay the stipend. I have to pay the waiver if I'm paying the stipend. We get some waiver money from Central, but not nearly adequate for what number of GTAs we have.
that makes sense.
So it would cover both.
Gotcha.
Yes.
How do you feel like this fee has impacted enrollment rates, specifically like from lower income and multicultural students into college bag?
I think all of our students, multicultural students, any of them, I think they really appreciate the opportunity to learn both in the classroom, theory, science and theory, but I think that application-based learning that we do in our laboratories and using whether it be the University of Livestock units, the agronomy teaching farms, that's just north of the football stadium, the horticulture greenhouses, all those hands-on learning areas. I think it's attracted students. I mean, when I start talking about the fact that they'll be in labs from their first semester on, students, that resonates with students. And so we think it's really been part of what's helped us keep our numbers up. Some of our peer groups on the east side of the Mississippi have probably lost some of that aspect. And so we think it has, whether it's been any more impactful with multicultural students than it has with just the general student body, I can't venture a guess on that. But I think that resonates with all of them, that they get that chance.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you see this as a permanent thing? Like, are you guys planning on fees always being a part of how you go from here on out? Because looking at the discussion surrounding this fee back in 2013-14, Provost Mason, Vice President Bosco both mentioned that. To quote Bosco, he said along the lines of, we need to have a fundamental discussion on why needs for students are having to be met through fees instead of tuition increases. It's now 3 years. You're still needing this fee. You're actually talking about expanding more resources with the mentorship program. Is it now status quo that the fee is going to be a part of it?
Well, probably the first year after this was implemented, I don't know what you told the deans, but my dean came back asked all of us at the table, what would you do with $1 million? And my answer is I would get rid of that fee. But nobody's shown up with that check yet. So right now, it's become more of a base part of our budget, especially on the GTA side of things, you know, in the departments as well as what I've done. There are some faculty lines and such that have now gone to that. And so, and there's been some things, and when I get faculty that have, you know, by the department have a retention issue, and they need extra teaching dollars, my permanent reserve for permanent dollars, there's not much there. And so the first thing I say is, well, is there a way to put any of it on some of your student fee money? Can you talk to your students about this position? Would this be a high enough priority for that? So it's becoming a bigger part of our base. But if I had an influx of money now, I'd be more than happy to cheapen the price for my students, but I don't have that flexibility to be able to do what we do. And it's, you know, we said with the students we would never raise this without coming back to them with the very same process we did before. Things are getting more expensive all the time, but I think we're good for right now. We're not anticipating raising ours, and if some colleges are raising theirs, we're not.
And I apologize if this is a, you know, super nitpicky question, but would you be able to estimate what percentage of the overall fees, so $900,000 a year, correct? What percentage of that is spent on instruction versus, so, you know, paying, whether it be GTAs or faculty, as opposed to equipment and, like you said, renovations, like different parts of waters, things like that? I apologize, we already said it.
So an ag econ, so you count the GTAs as instruction?
Yeah.
Okay, that just ramped it up quite a bit. I would say more than 50% goes to directly supporting instruction.
Gotcha.
Depends on the department. In ag communications, their part, probably not so much. It's gone more to facility innovation, you know, renovation, making better space and better equipment for the students. But then I've provided their GTA out of the college money, so and things like that. So I would say it's over 50% when you throw the GTAs in. As far as permanent, the faculty lines, the one in ag econ, and then the partial ones in grain science would be the most permanent of the dollars. But the agronomy ones, they've absorbed some things on with their fees on some faculty lines too.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's a ballpark. You talk about a ballpark.
Oh, that's good. No, that's good. I appreciate
That's what I
that.
get from Ethan.
Gives you 5 spreadsheets.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Dean Boggs. We've had a couple of colleges over the last couple of years, students complain openly about the lack of sincere, meaningful, timely student input into the fees, the fee allocations or criteria or anything. They've been open about that. I've heard just the opposite from College of Agriculture. You've done an unbelievable job from my vantage point of making sure students have meaningful input into at the departmental level and the college level. So I congratulate you on that. I think in terms of the growth, and I mean that very sincerely, because we all know it's very time consuming, and the college does an unbelievable job in the culture, making sure students are put first. And this is an excellent example of that. When you think about the growth the college went through several years, about 600 heads, if I remember right. Did you receive any tuition, any increases in your allocations from those as direct correlation to the increase in student enrollment?
Not really on the teaching side of things. We were able to backfill some on the research and extension side out of general use funds when that last big state budget cut came. But on the teaching side, we've been pretty static.
So philosophically, we're on the same page that this fee replaced tuition dollars, particularly on the instruction side, and you strategically placed it on increasing faculty, GTAs, GAs, expenditures that would have been very naturally on the tuition side if you'd received those allocations. So here's an example where our fees are going up. We call it college fees, but it's really cost of attendance. And there's an example of how a dean can strategically affect the instructional side, the student success side of our university. I wish we were all in tuition, but that's not a reality. And you're right. And to answer your question, so we have heroin now, and there's no way you're going to be able to back off from almost $1 million worth of fees each year, particularly when you strategically place it on lines and on GTAs and on the classroom experience, and also advising and enhancement of space, and also a commitment to student organization travel and the like. I see where that can be extremely beneficial, and I congratulate you.
It really helped us absorb the extra students. I mean,
Yeah.
extra sections and some extra course offerings and that type of thing. One thing, we did study very closely our competitors, and our primary competitors are Missouri and Oklahoma State, and somewhat, not a lot of Nebraska, but some, I looked at Nebraska, Colorado, basically the surrounding states. We are substantially lower on fees than any of them. And my counterpart in Oklahoma State, she and I were talking about banded tuition and to see how that was going. And she said she was told she had to increase her student fees this year because tuition wasn't going up and they were going to cut some things. She had to increase her fees. That came out of Central. So I appreciate this process and you guys have an input in this county.
What is the cost of our degree as compared to those other schools that you were looking at?
Oklahoma State's the one. I mean, that's our primary competitor. We are similar to them. We're a little bit higher on tuition. They're higher on fees. They've gone to this banded tuition now, where they can say whatever, but they went to it to generate more dollars per year because students were averaging about like ours do around 14. Well, they went to a band. You pay for 15, you get this many. 12 to 18, and so it's generating more per year. So it's a little harder to tell now from that standpoint, but there's a lot of pros and cons to that as well. What I like about it is it lets students take an extra class and get a minor and some things, but it also creates some real challenges of we don't have enough sections right now in some of our classes. So that's the challenge. But that's comparatively, I think we're very competitive. We're still good. We get students coming from all over east of here because they can come here for about the same as they can go in state, sometimes less.
John, how do you handle the more accounting side of it? So you have about $900,000 coming in annually, up or down, depending on the number of student credit hours generated. How do you account for X amount goes to X department and they may need equipment this year and they might need expensive equipment this year? Is there carry forward? Do you have a limit on the amount of carry forward? I think in the past, I can't remember who it was, showed us a spreadsheet. This is how much comes in, this is how much we've used, this is how much we haven't used at the end of this fiscal year, but we're saving it, banking it to do a big remodel. How do you manage that? Is that you who manages it?
That was the theory of the 20% at the college.
At the college level?
That a smaller department, especially, let's say, PATH came up with something that was really going to be a benefit to all their students and all those taking their courses, that $13,000 a year they could get in 10 years.
Yes.
There's a place where they can come to the college with a proposal, and then I would meet with the senators and the leadership group, and we would plot against that and see what other things we could leverage and go from there. So that's the approach we've taken. I said we have not set a limit on carryover. As I said, right now our balance is a little bit high, but everybody in our college is a little gun shy. What could happen in the next? So the Zooglets out. I'm going to say that out loud. So, yeah, we just don't really stand. So everybody's a little bit cautious.
What are any other questions that are around? Anything else for Dean Boggs?
I'll just ask if any, I know that you had said in the review form that you had a couple of phone calls from in the first year from students and from a couple of parents. Have you heard anything else recently as far
I
as?
haven't heard. I haven't had a question about fees since the first year.
Gotcha.
First year, it was primarily parents who got students' bill, or the students that got their bill,
Mhm.
that hadn't come to any of the meetings or any of the emails, and what's this new thing? I got a new line on my bill. What is this? And we explained what it was, and it makes sense. And I mean, don't like it, but we don't like it either. Here we go. But that would have been it.
Gotcha.
Nothing severe.
Good deal. Thanks. Any other questions? No?
Seeing none, thank you for
All right,
coming in.
thanks so much.
Dawn.
You bet.
Appreciate
So I
it.
assume I'll get a notice whether this is renewed or not soon.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're just, we'll have discussion over the next couple of weeks, and we'll let you know kind of what the discussion reflected.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
They're still over here watching.
Ready.
And the next item on the agenda after the fee review presentation is just any other fee review discussion from that. I know we've probably got through a lot of the questions, but if there's anything else that you're like, man, this was still really on my mind, but I didn't know how to ask it to Dean Boggs, or I would like maybe Provost Mason or Ethan or someone to answer it, feel free to ask that now, and we can kind of compile those questions if there are any, and work through that discussion. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have a fundamental question about academic fees in general and the place for them. I mean, asking the question about does he see this as permanent, and like Dr. Bosco, perfect analogy, he's hooked on heroin, getting off. When we look at in my personal life, if I go to a convenience store and I want a Twinkie and I don't have $1, I can't all of a sudden magically come up with this extra $1 like to pay for it. And when you look at the cost that they receive, and I know, Ethan, you have the numbers on what they receive from the general fund, all that kind of stuff. Why are we allowing our colleges to tack on these additional fees above and beyond tuition, and taking it and allocating its resources and not getting it somehow through tuition? Why is tuition not going up 6% a year to cover these costs versus, and if their enrollment's higher and all that kind of stuff, they get a larger cut. I mean, if it goes up, and also if it goes down, we see it go down, we know, I looked at their numbers, it has gone up 1,000, but tuition or enrollment overall for higher college goes down, but almost every college is going to come to us asking for a fee increase. Why are we not addressing, like, you just don't have the money to spend, because that's where we are at in Kansas higher education, instead of tacking on the fees? Why is that happening?
Let me take a first stab at
Yeah.
that. And I'm looking around the table, and I don't think Ethan was here yet. Dr. Bosco and maybe Dr. Reed are the two people, along with myself, who were at the table when the College of Agriculture came to us and said, and it was during when Reagan Case was SGA president, and an agriculture student, he said, I wish we didn't have to do this, but I'm voting for it. We aren't allowed to increase tuition in those levels. And we're having very concerted conversations right now because we're concerned, just as Don Boggs is, that we may be cut by the state and capped in terms of our tuition increase. So no one wants to increase these fees, but a college fee, if it generates less than a certain amount of money, we don't have to take it to the Board of Regents. So it's a way to get resources to a college that needs it. And the college has gone up by 1,000 students. They need it. I mean, I had the former dean, interim dean, and Don Boggs in my office pretty much yelling about how much they needed for animal science because their students were just exploding. A great problem to have, but a problem nonetheless. And they weren't willing to sacrifice the quality of the instruction, a known and well-known college for its instruction. So why didn't we take the whole amount of tuition and break it up and give them more? Well, a lot of colleges were growing at that time. Our entire university was growing at that time. We didn't have excess tuition to say, okay, we're gonna take it from education or engineering and give it to agriculture. Because other things were going up as well. That's how I would address the question.
I'd also argue too, I mean, it sounds like we should, right? If we're gonna do a 5% tuition rate increase, we should somehow allocate that out. But I'd argue that that 5% generates about $9 million, and I'm looking at our Jessica and Jack, they've been involved on the Budget Advisory Committee, and that's a lot of money. But we've also got huge increases this next year for health insurance changes that the state has imposed on us, other fringe rate changes as an employer that we have to pay. We don't have any option not to. We've got increased costs for utilities. We've got a potential state cut coming our way. So in some ways, our base tuition rate that we're, if we're going to go forward with, barely covers our ongoing costs, and there isn't a lot of flexibility to enhance the educational efforts that the colleges want to be able to do and provide to their students. And so that's where some of these fees kind of come back in, because they want to enhance that experience for all their students, and there's just not that much flexibility in just a traditional tuition rate increase that sort of comes online.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
So why then is that burden being put on the back of students instead of our state legislature and the central administration, who we didn't budget for those increases? Like you said, like we were surprised by the increase of costs and stuff like that. But now we're going to look at individual students and limit access to a land-grant university based off of the rising 5% tuition as well as increasing fees across the board.
A couple comments to that. We do anticipate the increases in needs. We have a number of people that watch the usage of our utilities so that we do know what to anticipate, because we're planning the budget a whole year in advance. So we are looking ahead. And we have lobbied strongly and with enthusiasm and passion, and we've done it with SGA representatives in Topeka to say we need increases, not just us. All of the Regents universities need increases in state support. And we have shown the graphs, we'll show them again if you'd like. A level of support from the state has gone down, and we have nowhere else to get that money than from tuition from students. There are very few inputs of resources to the university. State support, philanthropy, which we can talk about more, and revenue from tuition. So as the state support went down, and right now, we could go to Topeka and yell until we're green and blue in the face. They don't have money either. They're in a $300 million gap for this fiscal year. That's why Dr. Boggs is so concerned about a budget cut now. But we have been lobbying hard. And Dr. Bosco and others have been saying, don't put it on the backs of students. Where do we put it? We'd like to put it on a state, and we have a whole office of state government relations talking about how our university is being harmed by that, and students are being harmed by this trend, not just in Kansas, unfortunately, but all over our country.
I know Dean Boggs mentioned that because the question was asked, well, where did maybe increase in tuition dollars to your college go when your enrollment increased? And he spoke to it going towards research and extension efforts and kind of backfilling there. Has there been an increase in restricted use funds at all that could have gone towards those dollars that then tuition money went towards instead, to kind of like pad that, if that makes sense? Maybe that's a better Dean Boggs question too that I should have asked.
No, I think that's a better question.
Well, no, I'm
for the
trying
budget office.
So what has happened is the state has reduced their support for extension and research activities, which is a separate sort of budget that we call the eStart budget. As the state has reduced its support there, the university felt that the commitment to providing those services was important, and that we wanted to continue that effort across the state. And so we've backfilled some of those cuts with available tuition dollars. And so that's what you see is sort of as a support to continue those activities across the state. Now, whether the argument is there other restricted use dollars that could have gone to that, the college's ability to generate restricted use dollars is primarily limited to some fees for service activities, federal dollars, which they already have those fully programmed out. And so I don't know that there would have been a lot of flexibility to sort of backfill that particular cut that they took. Does that make sense? Sort of.
Trent, you mentioned a land grant university.
Mhm.
There are the three legs of the stool of a land grant: construction, which is what we're talking about here, the research effort, and the engagement outreach effort, extension. And when the state was no longer supporting that extension function, we felt, and I'll say we, I, President Schultz, a number of other people felt so strongly that you couldn't drop one of the missions of the land grant. We never anticipated it would be year after year after year.
Mhm.
And Dr. Bosco, myself, Jack and Jessica, Ethan are all on the budget advisory committee. And Thursday, we're going to be talking about what can we do differently. And we've put everything on the table. We've said, do we continue backfilling these dollars? I mean, truly, when this decision was made back in 10 maybe,
Yeah.
we thought it would be 1 to 2 years, that the state would turn around and continue funding those things. They haven't. I wouldn't have made a different decision back then with the president, but I never saw it go in 7 years. And I think it has to be reevaluated, but the consequences are huge.
Well, we've seen states like stand up to, like LSU is the prime example just because they got major headlines because of football. But they threatened, like the president came out and said, if we don't get more state money, we're going to have to shut down football. And all of a sudden, money appeared. And it's amazing from the state all of a sudden because they realized they were going to lose votes. Well, what that was LSU had to hurt. And the state, ultimately, we're a public institution, and the state is responsible for our budget and responsible, like at the end of the day, if we go belly up, that's on the state, that's not on.
Louisiana State filed financial exigency, and that's not what you want to do. And if you don't know what that is, we don't have enough money to pay our bills. It's bankruptcy.
And I'm saying all of a sudden the state all of a sudden has money. Governor Jindal, all of a sudden there's a special, it wasn't a tax because he vowed not to do tax, but they found the money somewhere. It's amazing how that works. And so like I sit here and I go, I understand that as a central administration, you have to look for a revenue source somewhere. And your easiest / hardest is on students. But at the end of the day, it can't. He sees this as a permanent, it's heroin. The state now sees this as heroin. I can continue to cut it and it will continue to go back on the backs of students. And at some point, it has to stop.
Absolutely.
And I wonder, because of our enrollment drops and et cetera, are we at that point?
We are. It's that point. We're seeing the elasticity of what students can pay. The backs of our students with a broken record. We're at that point. We're hurting spring enrollments. Is it Cleveland here?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not backing off. I'm saying that we're at that point where students and families are feeling the increasing gap between financial aid and the cost of attendance, not only here, but throughout America. We're disenfranchising the middle class, particularly those families between $50,000 and $90,000 income. That's bread and butter for our school. The challenge is that if you take a few moments tonight and review the historical documents that Jack and Jessica and Trent gave us, gives you a feel for why this committee was formed in the first place. It was formed to deal with the rising cost of tuition fees, to decide to recommend who's going to pay, how much, and where the money's going to go. That's what this body was formed about 10 or 12 years ago. If you read the preamble, it remains the same today. We went through some very difficult times throughout the legislative sessions over the last 10 or 12 years, and Board of Regents policies and edicts. For example, there were times where we were told by the regents they would not accept more than a 3% tuition increase. Now, our needs were, we needed a 10% tuition increase just to keep the quality of instruction open. So now we're faced with the regents saying we'll not accept more than a 3% tuition increase. And then colleges got a chance to go and increase fees because the Board of Regents was not approving or reviewing very closely college fees. So you look at some schools, maybe in the state, maybe outside around the state of Kansas, and you'll see college fees, if you look at them closely, are almost as much as tuition. But yet tuition gets the headline. It's the total cost of attendance that's hurting our students and families. Not necessarily tuition increases. It's the aggregate of college fees and privilege fees and housing and the cost of books and all the other kinds of things that go into the total cost of attendance. And that's the challenge we have. And so to say, well, let's draw a line, we've had a philosophy here of doing more with less. That's what we inherited. If we want to stop doing more with less and making those kinds of decisions, well, it begins with reducing academic programs, making the hard decisions about who's going to stay, who's going to go, what are our priorities at the minute level, so that we in fact put ourselves in a position where you call it right sizing. And I don't know about any other states. I just know my school, and that's been a difficult. We've not reached that point as an institution. We have attempted to do a lot more with less, and we're feeling that now. I mean, I have staff that have not received an increase in 3 years. We've had requests in other bodies to increase our counseling center staff. I've got a wait list in the county. I got a financial aid office that last week, this is not part of the agenda, last week sent out more financial aid notices to new students than ever before. First school in the state to get out our financial aid award letters. They did it quietly, yet they've got smaller staff than anybody in the state. Some of the four-year regionals have more financial aid officers than we do. They're in an abomination of a space. And that's indicative of some of our faculty offices, some of our advising ratios. We've had this philosophy of doing more with less, and right now I believe we've reached a crossroads. And it's starting to affect our students, our faculty, our staff, and one fee isn't enough to make amends. And we're still talking about a legislature that is still dealing with issues like bathrooms and concealed weapons. And it's not directly discussing academic success, student success, economic development on what I believe is the most significant school in the state and in many ways in the country. So it is troubling. I don't have any ready-made answers, but I don't think we're going to back off on fees. I don't think we are. I think you're going to see more fees, and we're going to be faced with addressing very specifically who pays, where it goes, and how much, and recommending to the president to make some very difficult decisions as we move forward. Sorry.
I have a question. Has there been a discussion about areas in which we could cut down programs and cut back on services that we offer and with as little impact as possible to the university?
A number of things are going on. I've put a hold on a number of faculty hires because of student credit hour generation. I mean, animal science was not one of those. But we have other units that are not bringing in a lot of students, have not increased, and yet have not had much turnover in faculty. So I have put some holds on those. We have an efficiencies committee that Cindy Bontrager and Jeff Morris are working on to say, how can we not necessarily do more with less, but be more efficient or effective in what we're doing? Does everybody need one of those? Or could we have 3 units share something? So there have been a number of things like that. I have not, as the academic side, and Dr. Bosco can talk from his side, I have not said, we're going to discontinue X department, and I'm not going to say what X department is, or X program. We're getting darn close. I would agree with Dr. Bosco. We're getting darn close to that. Other universities have done that. This unit has been small forever and not generating a great deal of interest from the student side, so we'll start phasing it out. Phasing it out means people, and unless you say that you're financially exigent, you can't terminate a tenured faculty member. So it takes time to work with personnel.
Is that law or is that in the Kansas State Constitution? Because is that the state law that they can't be reaching faculty members? Because I thought that tenure wasn't recognized by the state of Kansas as a whole.
Once you are given tenure, you are given tenure unless the university cannot pay you, which is financial exigency, and that's what LSU went through, and they're going to dig out from under that for a very, very long time. Or you do something that is horrible, really, really, really bad, that's against the law, and you're terminated for cause, essentially. Now, it's Arts and Sciences over here, forget. So Arts and Sciences is looking for a new dean. So we interviewed candidates for the new dean, and I said, so how are you going to hold department heads accountable to work with their faculty? Because we have terminated tenured faculty when they weren't doing their jobs. And I want a new dean in Arts and Sciences who is going to be very effective at saying, you don't do a half a job and get paid for a full job. You do a full job, and if you're not doing a full job, you're going to be held accountable for that. All the deans do that, but we're searching for Arts and Sciences, that's why I use them.
And I think when we talk about the need to maybe phase out programs, maybe start drawing those types of lines where we are more efficient in certain areas and don't continue to try and support as many departments and units, I think if possible, however much of that type of information could be shared with this committee in terms of decision making, I think would be very helpful, because when we talk about that in terms of we want to lessen the financial burden on students, I think it's important that we have the whole picture when we talk about, because if we know that certain departments, for instance, if a college is coming to us with a fee request this year, but they are having certain departments being phased out, so maybe their costs are going to be less.
For the record, we're not phasing out any departments.
For the record, this is a hypothetical question in the event that we're in a financial situation where we need to do something like that, which some would argue we are. And maybe that's something that this committee could discuss more thoroughly this year. Yeah, because I think that would be important to our decision making, because if that were something in the College of Ag, for instance, as we're reviewing their fee, not that it is, and I don't think it is, but if they were having faculty lines put on hold and things of that nature, I think it would be helpful for us to know that maybe they weren't needing as much money.
It is not the case with the College of Agriculture.
Okay. But
as we're not just looking at the academic side of the house, that is the largest amount of money commitment, because it is the largest unit. But I think we have to look over the entire area. What are we doing that may be not as effective, whether that's an academic unit, portion of an academic unit, or a section of another area of the university? Obviously not financial aid.
Which brings to a slightly tangential note, but today, right now is a good time to slip it in. Jack and I are both serving on that Administrative Efficiencies Review Committee that Provost Mason spoke to. And at our last meeting, we talked about trying to get some student input on processes that they think are efficient or inefficient for the purposes of obviously what we've been discussing. And so we've made an org sync form that we're going to send out to SGA and can go out to any other students. And so we'll send out that to you all as well, so you can have your input into maybe opinions that you have on university processes. So that was tangential but related.
Because I think that's one of the things that Dr. Mason brought up a good point, that there are efforts to look, so I know we've talked a little bit about, the elimination of units, but there could be some efforts to become more efficient, inter-unit, if you will, right? So 3 units in whatever college, I don't know where that would quite go yet, but perhaps there's some shared services that could come about that would save money. And I'm looking forward to taking those and taking your thoughts on that to that subcommittee.
The other thing that our president has challenged us with is, in the past, if we've had a cut to take, Ethan or the person in Ethan's position would say, okay, we need X million dollars, that's percent of your budget. So you get cut 1%, you get cut 1%, I get cut 1%, everybody gets cut the percentage, whatever that is, that comes up with the exact amount of money. We're exploring ways that this unit is so critical and generating resources, why would we cut it the same amount we're cutting everybody else? So not cutting the same amount, but differentially cutting. So a unit that's not producing as much, if you have a unit that is not getting the enrollment or is not doing what it needs to be doing, it would get cut more than a unit that's incredibly efficient, as Dr. Boggs was talking about, with increased numbers of students and things like that.
I think that's going to be of particular interest to students, because I think when you look at the different units serving different missions, it's like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the same cut that has been applied to the physics and math department has also been applied to the School of Leadership Studies, correct?
Not necessarily.
No, that's true.
We have, Dr. Bosco gets his percent, I get my percent. The deans get their percent. And then they look across their college and say, physics and mathematics are producing, they have more and more students. The engineering initiative is really affecting them. We can't possibly cut them, but here's a unit that will remain nameless that is not producing as many students as student credit hours. We may have to cut them more. So we allow the deans to do that. We allow the vice presidents to do that. So Dr. Bosco may differentially decide how he's going to make those cuts within his units. What he has to come up with is X amount of money, because we have to give that back to this guy.
So the differentiated thing that you were talking about before Trent asked this question is going to happen at your level? Like, you will decide which deans has more of a cut than another dean?
Yes.
Or will it even happen at the vice president level and going, Dr. Bosco, you have to cut more than.
So 30 departments within student life, I have a bill, and so I'll go ahead and I will pick units that will take less of a cut, and others will take more of a cut. It's not on productivity, it's how much, whether they have whether they can generate money or not. And that goes with fees. For example, the registrar's office takes a larger hit than the student life office. They don't have a way of generating any fees, but the registrar's office has a transfer student account. So transcripts prices will go up. That gives me a chance to keep other units within my division whole. So it happens at that level.
And we made that decision very, very deliberately. Who knows student life better than Dr. Bosco? Who knows a college better than the dean? Rather than saying, okay, each of you department heads need to give up this percent. The dean needs to work with the department heads to say, where can we make these cuts to come up with the dollar amount that is required.
And Dr. Mason, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of the things that was discussed as, let's say when you cut across the board X percent, that could be to all central units, X percent, to all academic units, X percent, but then each individual college would collectively come up with that 5%, whatever it is.
Right.
But that there could be a lot of discrepancy within.
Just change college to major units, because it's an entire university family that would go through it.
Right.
Do you think there'd ever be a time when we would have a cut to all of our central administration and then a cut that was a different amount to academic units?
I think that historically happened previously,
Okay.
where administrative units, so potentially Dr. Bosco's and my offices got cut more percentage-wise than the colleges did for preserving the academic
Mhm.
portion that we hold very dear. In places like facilities under Vice President Bontrager, they did take higher cuts. If you look at the number of people, we're lower in number of people than they were a number of years ago, and yet our physical plant is even larger.
But
So-
Provost Mason mentioned this earlier, the bulk of the budget is out in the academic
In the
unit.
academic
Right.
unit.
So in order, if the state comes in and says, you gotta cut 1%, well, to generate that amount of money solely on the backs of the non-academic units,
Right.
it would be devastating, right? So there's always a
There's
little
not
bit
enough
of
money there.
give and take
Yes.
that you have to have.
And keep me honest, Ethan, is about 70% of the total university budget is out in the academic units.
Yeah.
Versus 30% in the administrative units.
Generally,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was gonna say quickly, seeing as that we're kind of transitioning into a little more of a discussion on tuition and budget specifically, I was gonna ask, are there any specific questions about agriculture? If not, I was gonna see if either I want to hand that out.
No questions? I can't talk for Don, so I,
Not a question,
Mhm.
but to the question I asked Don, and I see you have a review sheet, and so maybe you just asked him for it. You may not remember this. Maybe it's because it was engineering. Engineering came in with a spreadsheet and said how much they collected, how much they used, how much carry forward they had, and what they were going to use it for. There's a nice balance sheet. Now, if we didn't ask Don to do that, that's fine. But it helped because it made me see, okay, of that $900,000 you've collected, you've used in these 3 years this much. And he knew how it had been used, how much he had banked, and maybe what that was for. And the questions came up, I think it was engineering. They were collecting money from their surcharge and had a particular use for it, and the committee was very fine with it once they knew what it was and why it was going to be held for a little bit before they used it.
And Jessica, I can talk about that. I think that'd be an appropriate question to ask, because I think that, we said provide a budget, which is how we got the individual departments in there. And so that is really good information to have the departmental, the way that $900,000 is distributed amongst the departments. But that question you're asking does provide a lot more of kind of an insight to how that works.
I think that would be a good way to word it, because if we were just working off of kind of what was past documents said, like a similar template to the fee proposal, and so I tried to adopt that, and that would be a way more specific way to ask it. So
It might be in the history that you passed out to us. I didn't bring my laptop tonight, but the report from engineering might be in there.
Gotcha.
Is it possible to get it before they come the night of?
get the document. Yeah, I can ask APD for that.
Because especially for like Selena, I know she's no longer on our screen, but
Yeah.
like, I don't know if she had that copy in her hand. But
Yeah. Okay. I can ask that for APD.
She did not.
want me to go through it?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay.
Unless, just one more time, is there any other kind of questions related to that? Excellent.
All right. So what you have in front of you, Jessica asked me to put together a table that shows the GU budget by college and the tuition generated by college. You'll notice at the bottom, I've got quite a bit of caveats on the data. Jessica and Jack can attest, the budget's quite a complicated beast to get your arms around, and so there's lots of different ways to sort of slice and dice what you have in front of you. But primarily what I've tried to present would be sort of as close as I can get to apples comparison to say, on the GU budget side, that is their college's main campus budget. It doesn't include anything related to extension type activities, any of that stuff. It would include activities out of the dean's office, academic advising, if they have academic advising on the GU budget. It would be their instructional. It could have some research activities off of it. It's sort of that whole conglomeration of activities that an academic unit might have paid for out of the GU budget. So that's in that side of it. It doesn't include anything, and I have it documented down there. It doesn't include their summer school. It doesn't include because we do different revenue sharing for the tuition that they generate in summer school. It doesn't include global campus offerings, the revenues they generate there. For engineering and business, it doesn't include their faculty surcharge. You've seen that as you've looked at their or will see that, I guess, as time progresses. And then there's also a piece in the base tuition rate, which is called the college fee or instructional fee. It doesn't have that in here. So I'm trying to be as close as I can to what they generate. And like Don's fee that he's presented to you tonight, that's considered not tuition, and so that's not in here at all. So you wouldn't see that piece reflected. On the tuition generated side, it's just those hours that these units taught on campus during the day. Evening courses, global campus courses, that's not in here. That's under the global campus sort of budget that they manage and the revenue sharing that we have there with them. And it wouldn't obviously include summer school either, since that's a different. Like I said, it's based on the College of Instruction. So like arts and sciences, they obviously do a lot of service level courses. And so they have the ability to generate, they're teaching a lot of students from a lot of the different colleges and in larger sections. And so they have that ability to generate quite a bit of revenue based on them being the College of Instruction here on campus. So that's how that's sort of counted and credited to them. I've used the applicable fiscal year tuition rate, both for graduate and undergraduate, in-state, out-of-state rates. And so I've just sort of combined it all together here for you to see the total tuition generated. And does not include anything for engineering or business faculty surcharges.
So I know that it's faculty surcharges obviously are not a part of this. However, I know that would be part of an RU budget. However, is there any possibility for something like the College of Engineering to pay for a faculty line out of some sort of RU dollars that are not fees? I know it's kind of a weird question, but like a grant money, like does that ever happen?
Go ahead.
That happens to some extent.
Okay.
But there aren't that many instructional grants that you might
Right.
get,
Gotcha.
right?
Right.
It would be more of the research portion of that
I
faculty
see.
member's salary that would
You'd have
go
a
against it.
research assistant professor or something like that that's working on
I
a
see.
research project, but not teaching.
But the bulk of your faculty salaries are going to come out of this
Yeah.
GU budget or appropriate faculty surcharges.
That's
Yes.
Excellent.
Or fees. Even Don even mentioned that there's
If
some
they have
faculty
on fees.
people that he has on his fees here, and that might be spread out. You might see that in other
Okay.
college fees as well.
So
Awesome.
there are some colleges that have the ability, or that have a lot of like endowed teaching positions and endowed deanships and those types of things. What would you say, what colleges have like a notably higher amount of endowed positions, especially on the instructional side? Would you have any idea?
Business
I
and
would have.
engineering.
I mean, I could go get that. I'd have to go get it.
Yeah, but business and engineering are the biggest holders of endowed chairships.
Would you say that's just reflective of their, like in general, the ability that they have to raise private money as opposed to other
An
units?
endowed faculty position starts at $1 million. So I'm not going to be an endowing a faculty position in the near future. It's a certain type of donor. For example, we're exploring an endowed deanship, but it is a terminal gift. It's an estate when the person passes on. So, to have them now in the books working, it's predominantly business and engineering.
And so a position like that's an endowed position, that would not be represented by this. That would not be paid out of that would not show up in a GU budget.
Well, yes, they are, because our
Okay.
endowments, a $1 million endowment will produce about $40,000 to $45,000 a year. Our faculty in business and engineering make a great deal
More than
more
that,
than
yeah.
$25,000 a year. So they have a base of general use dollars on them, and
I
then
see.
it's a supplement.
So if you have a faculty member making $100,000 a year and are getting 40 from that endowment, you're still paying 60 out of your GU budget.
So it's mainly
Perfect.
subsidized pretty much
It
by
is.
donors.
And it's not all in their salary. Many times there's a discretionary dollar amount that they can use to support a student, travel, whatever. Many of them are using it to support students.
I
Got a couple of questions, Ethan.
Yeah.
The tuition generated is purely tuition per credit hour
That's right.
by college.
That's right.
And-
Whether it's in-state or out-of-state, depending on the flavor of the student, I've accounted for that.
And the GU budget is strictly state funds?
No, that's
Okay, tell me
state
about
and
that.
tuition. So that's a good point.
Go ahead and explain that.
The GU budget here would be a combination of state dollars that they would, and tuition dollars. I was trying to explain, we treat those sort of interchangeable, the state and the tuition. We look at GU as our base operations, and so we will mix and match dollars as we need to. And so this would be, the GU budget would be tuition or state dollars, but not really any special allocation. So it wouldn't be anything where we've gotten some dollars from the state for global food security. That's not in here.
So tuition generated, the money that says tuition generated, some of those dollars are in the GU budget?
That's right. And this is, again, you're only seeing the academic units. You're not seeing the non-academic units. And so the whole picture is really what we look at when we're balancing the GU budget. So you're seeing just sort of a slice of what we have in front of you.
So the
For
other
university.
units are supported by tuition and
Yeah,
state dollars.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So just a quick question, just first glance at this, like, even when you look at like business, they're the disproportionate one along with arts and science in terms of the revenue that they're bringing in versus what comes out of the general budget. You just said business and engineering are usually the ones that have the money and the restricted funds behind it and stuff like that. So why would engineering be the second highest out of the general budget versus like business being 9 million? You know, like there's a discrepancy there in terms of, especially since engineering has more allocation out of the general use budget than they do tuition. Why is that?
Couple thoughts, and Ethan can companion on here. One is that in engineering, there's a research expectation of all those faculties, so the amount of instruction that they're doing is probably less on a FTE basis than in business. Their equipment, everything else are things that need to be funded in that area, and so their original allocation probably was historically higher to support that.
We've also since the state authorized the Engineering Initiative Act, we, for this particular budget, we have given engineering their enrollment growth off of a base number that was set in 2013. Anything that they have sort of grown their student count by, we've calculated and given part of that back to engineering, but also parts arts and sciences as well, because a lot of those engineering students have to come through that college before they can go to engineering.
But that's in the restricted, right?
No, that's
No.
in this GU budget. That's when I say it's inclusive of the Engineering Initiative Program. Now, you're thinking of their faculty surcharge. That is,
No, I was thinking of the initiative budget because what my understanding was, and I could be
Oh,
wrong,
I know
in your
what you
first
mean.
presentation is when we go to cut, you can't cut those dollars because they're direct state.
the Engineering Initiative Program is, we do get some state dollars, but that is primarily going to financing the debt service on the building that was put in place, so we can't cut that.
Yeah.
And it also is funding some GTA lines in the college as well, and so we don't cut that.
So to make a contrast to what I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Sorry. So you said that the additional revenue generated by more students in engineering is split between engineering and arts and sciences. What is the ratio of that split?
It's about 50.
It's almost 50-50.
Yeah, it is.
And that a portion goes to admissions, but it's a small portion. And so I think we're being very honest about 50-50. And you know how that was decided? Engineers are taking about 50 to 55% of their student credit hours in arts and sciences.
Yes.
And we looked at all of It varies if you're a chemical engineer versus a civil engineer.
Okay.
So with that 50-50, so is that 50 just going to arts and sciences and they decide where they're going to spend that?
Oh, well, they can try to decide how they're gonna spend it, but they have to work with me and Ethan and Cindy.
But it's just like trying to make sure that like that maybe more of it's going to like math and physics
It
rather
is.
than like history.
And that's where it's been targeted, is in a lot of those departments that provide those service courses for those engineering students.
Math, physics, English, and communication studies, because everybody takes those courses. And then math and physics specifically because the calcs, the calc twos, you name it. Chemistry also is getting some. But we look at that. We track the student credit hour increases and we support them in those areas where they're seeing growth. So they don't get to decide, they think they do, but they have to work with us to make those decisions. When I interrupted you, what I was thinking I was going to say was, unlike we described with Don, when his student numbers went up, we didn't have the resources in tuition to increase his tuition allotment. The state gave us money with the Engineering Initiative Act, and we said, here's your baseline, and Ethan described this. You go up in student credit hours, you get that tuition. Completely different than we were able to do with agriculture because we didn't get an influx of money for agriculture.
Oh, I was going to ask, and maybe I apologize for not knowing the answer to this, but with the Engineering Initiative Act, how long will those dollars be continuing from the state, do you think? And will that put us in trouble if we have a large amount of growth?
The dollars go through, oh gosh.
It was 10 years from the beginning,
Yeah.
so if the beginning was 13, is it 23?
Yeah, 20, yeah.
It was a 10-year lock.
So remember, again, that's going to debt service primarily.
Right.
On the building, and so the bond, the dollars are coming in and should be available to pay off the debt service. So that debt service goes away once we pay that off. Theoretically, then we don't need that much
Right.
from the state. to
However,
support it, right?
The dean of the college and I are already beginning to work with government relations, if our state can get some money, and say, we'd like this initiative to continue for just this reason. We don't want to put additional burdens on the rest of the university for tuition dollars. We would like the money to continue coming in.
And so the thought is, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That was a quick question.
Great
The
conversation.
thought is that once we have paid off that debt, then all of that money, or most of that money that's not used up by GTAs, can be transferred to the faculty lines?
So, no, that money, it won't exist anymore.
The state won't be getting
The
it
state won't be
unless
giving
we
it to
get
us
it
anymore.
upped again.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Because I thought that one of the things that you said was that part of that agreement was that if the College of Engineering were to grow its enrollment, then that tuition money
So
would.
we're talking two different pots.
Okay,
right?
okay,
Two different pots.
okay.
You got your enrollment growth, that's going back and being shared with engineering, arts, and sciences. Then you've got dollars from the state that are primarily going to debt service.
I see.
And then once that debt service is paid off, then the state dollars wouldn't need.
So there's not any state dollars that are making that happen. It's simply an internal agreement that says
Yes.
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 it has
State
that.
said we're gonna give you $3.5 million a year, you decide. how
But,
you
and the state said you need to grow and you have to hit these
these
targets.
targets,
Right.
which they'll hold us.
They are holding us accountable
I
to
see.
it. And so to help engineering meet those targets, there's the agreement that, okay, if obviously your enrollment has to grow to hit those targets.
Mhm.
We need to be able to give you back resources
Yeah.
to meet those initiatives.
And has that started, or like
Yeah,
if we will? Okay, and that's what you see represented here by like the increase of $1 million from.
You're seeing a lot of things happen in this view, right?
Right.
This is like the probably 60,000 foot view
Right.
of budget change that has taken place over a multiple number of years.
Right.
So you're seeing, like I mentioned earlier, fringe rate changes.
Mhm.
Those have happened over time, and so we've had to devote more money, more resources to those sort of fringe rate changes. You're seeing salary initiatives that we've done for primarily faculty, but over time we've done other salary initiatives. You're seeing those dollars sort of flow through in here and increase. So this is a real, I mean, when I say real high, this is a real high level
It's not
view
granular.
of
Sure.
all the changes that have taken place over that mountain.
But part of those increases do go
Oh, yeah.
are part of that agreement, right? So
Yeah.
I'm looking at like engineering line from 13 to 14, that's $1 million. 14 to 15 is $1 million, then it's about 700,000 from 15 to 16. Those are included in that. Obviously, is the fringe rate
Yeah, it's
changes and
that's
everything,
right.
but part of that does include increased funding for engineering
Engineering.
as a result of that increased tuition.
Duplication.
Yeah, Victor, sorry about that. I didn't cut you off. It's such a long question.
So we've been talking about increases a lot, but say we come to a point where enrollment starts going up again and the state starts giving K-State more support financially. At what point can we start looking at getting rid of these small fee increases, like the $20 fee that we just got proposed? Like, is there ever going to be a point where we can look at it and say this is no longer needed? We can get rid of this and alleviate some of the stress on our students.
So I would be disingenuous with you if I thought the state was going to be able to give us enough money that we could do that.
Right.
I know that Dr. Bosco uses the heroin analogy. We can call it heroin. I just see it as an incredible need to keep the quality of our instruction. I would love, just like Dean Boggs said, you give me $1 million, we'll take that $900,000 fee thing away. I look across the country, I talk to my colleague provost, it's just not happening. But I would love to, I would love for us to be here 10 years from now and the person, arts and sciences, sorry. That the person who's representing arts and sciences gets a hold of you and said, they took it away. I would love that to be the case. I just worry that that's not been the trend in higher education.
So it's safe to say for the most part that any fee increase that we vote on today will be permanent for multiple years.
I don't know, my crystal ball is as foggy as anyone's. I hope the state comes back.
And a reminder is that we are just recommending fee increases, decreases, stabilization to the president, and he makes those final decisions. And then because then he recommends them to the Board of Regents, who then makes the final decision. So yeah, just for further, just since we're starting out here, and yeah, and the College of Agriculture, we're in the process of every 3 years a fee that's already proposed and in place. It's practice to review that fee and then just recommend to the president whether or not we think it should continue. So I figure everyone knew that, but just wanted to clarify it too.
This question for Provost Mason, when you look at one of the things you said that majority of this budget, historically, the reason why engineering might be high because of the research expectations that are required upon them. When you sat down with President Schultz in 08, 09 to come up with K-State 2025, how much is the pressure? So the fees that we'll review with engineering, and I know I've heard rumblings that will be a fee increase proposed, which will go to cover instruction and all that kind of stuff. How much are they feeling the pressure of K-State 2025 to keep that level or that increase of research that now is being put on the back of students to cover instruction, like basic for their degree? And I understand research in terms of the better the research is at the institution, the more your degree is worth. That's something the state legislature doesn't get. But when you made this 2025 vision, it was before a lot of these state cuts. Like it was kind of right in that meeting, right there. Yeah.
There was a big cut in 09. And
I was an undergrad then, and
Okay.
I remember the hiring freeze, or temporary hiring freeze they put on and stuff like that. But we didn't see it going this way for multiple years. You had said that you maybe a couple of years. So roundabout way, how much has 2025 taken up this general use budget in terms of the research they've had to increase and is taking up resources that generally would have gone towards instruction, but now that they have higher expectations in terms of research?
I don't know exactly how much, but I'm gonna say extremely little. We care very much about the instruction of students, and we ask our faculty to write grants, get extramural funding to bring in to support. So if I said that the base historical funding for engineering is higher than, say, I think you compared it to business.
Yep.
It's just the physical needs. Now, I say that and we have this brand new business building, but just the physical needs of a college of engineering putting the labs together, the instructional labs, being able to attract top flight faculty. You've got to use some of the money, GU dollars in your budget, but you're not saying I'm going to take this from instruction and get this new faculty member. Teams are really careful about that. And pressure of K-State 2025, I guess I look at it very differently. K-State 2025 is an aspirational goal for us. I'm not sure it was pressure, it was a direction. And no one is saying, you went from 68 to 64, you're a failure after the first 5 years. You're not in the top 50. Well, in some of the metrics, 2 of them, we're at 23, that's pretty dang good. And another one, we're really close to top 50. But I saw it more as a direction, a focus, rather than pressure. I mean, Don should still be here.
Yeah, I would ask you too, have you seen an ability, an excitement to recruit faculty that see this as a very positive, the research side, that then plays out over on the academic side by you've got top ranked faculty coming in that are able to provide that sort of increased educational experience for some of your graduate students or other students. So it's an aspirational goal that has helped our university attract some talent.
But it's tough for people that cost more money when we don't have the money. That's why we have to do these academic things. Where you're getting more people that are higher salary. And one of the things, undergraduate research, I know has improved exponentially. I wish they would have had that in my undergrad days before you came. But that, Dr. Daniel, was a new position that was formed, and him and his team has done a great job of doing that. But that's an extra cost that wasn't there, that was put in because of K-State 2025. And so that's where we didn't see the state cutting this much.
We did.
And so, but the pressure of 2025, there is that pressure there because we want to reach those aspirations. We want to be
And research isn't the only piece of 2025.
Yeah.
Right. First part was student success. And we see that with emphasis. You look back at 2025, we had a group of assumptions. And I just wrote down very quickly. First of all, we assumed no budget cuts from the state. That's in the 2025 plan. Okay. No. So right there. Okay. We did not have the College of Business Administration. The new business college was not in 2025 at the beginning. Wasn't there. The engineering initiative that we talked so much about was not in 2025. Was not there when we developed 2025. We went through qualified admissions. The most significant change in our state's qualified admissions was not in 2025. The engineering initiative, the $1 billion campaign was not in 2025. So international students, the boom and now the bust was not in 2025. So, and I just rattled off 6 or 7 assumptions that are no longer there.
And
Go ahead,
why,
please.
after the first 5 years of 2025, we're going to be re-examining it. And that's going to begin to happen.
Sorry.
Would you say too that with K-State 2025 we had the ability to garner private resources, private money because of this focus and this new direction that weren't
Absolutely.
available to us before?
And we could talk to our current president, we could talk to our former president, that the fact that we are going to hit our campaign goal early is because people got excited about this university has a direction they're going. And that we can hire, I don't interview faculty, but I interview department heads, directors, associate deans, and deans, and each one of them come in and say, you have a really exciting strategic plan. I would like to be a part of that. Do they cost more? Well, they don't cost more. I mean, everybody costs more these days, but we're getting a group of individuals, and we look at faculty salaries. We try to get competitive faculty salaries. One of the first things the faculty said, if we want to be a top 50 public research university, you should pay us like one. Whoa. I said, how about if you become a top 50 public university, then I'll pay you that. And the differences are huge. You look at an AAU university, the faculty, the provost, the vice presidents for student life are making more than we are.
Yes. Sure.
And I think this is, as we come up against 7:30, I hate to halt really great discussion, but I think this is really a thoughtful place to leave us on. And if you have like thoughts simmering in your brain, please jot them down, send them to us via email, have them for next time, something of that nature.
Especially if there are questions about that architecture fee review, we'd love to give those to Dean Boggs. Agriculture, not architecture.
Agriculture, but also as we have architecture coming up the next time, Trent made a really good point that it would be good to try and get those documents out earlier, and so as well as potentially documents that we request from Cindy and Ethan's office. So we will do our best to try and do that for next meeting. That's a good note, and we will also try and get that more detailed information about the dollars coming in and being budgeted and carried over from Dean Boggs. And then we would also be happy to get any more information you're interested in that would help you make better decisions if you let us know what that might be over the next couple weeks before our next meeting.
And finally, sorry.
It's not in there. I'm looking at your computer like it's the font of knowledge. If it's not in that original file that you sent us, I know that I have the report that it was Gary Clark who gave it on the engineering.
Okay.
It's not. I
It's
don't
not in
know.
there?
I think
Okay.
it was last year, correct?
Yeah.
I-
Yeah,
Or
we
then-
have the fee proposals though that we can get hold of.
Yeah,
I can get the report that I gave.
Okay, super.
Just so you
Great.
can
That'd be great.
that'd be excellent. The other thing was I was going to say, we will be sending out that administrative efficiencies review, so please.
And we should be sometime soon this month have proposals for new fees this year from
That just
Provost
came
Mason. They just came in. Do you have an estimate for maybe when that would get to this committee so we could have it out before the next meeting is February 21st.
And that's when Tim is
It
presenting.
is, yes.
So what Jessica, Jack, and I talked about is very similar to the questions you were asking. Could we have it in advance? We thought it might be a very good idea to have a meeting where you see the proposals and can start thinking about your questions in advance of the dean or the associate dean coming in and presenting them. So you've had a chance to really think about it and talk about it without the dean in the room.
And that's budgeted in for briefly for the last half hour, if that would be
The
possible
21st.
for the 21st, if we would have the proposals in by then.
We should, I cannot physically be here that meeting.
Okay.
But maybe I can get all the stuff to you in advance. You can get it to
That'd be
the
sweet.
group and you can begin that discussion. Would we then use the next meeting too to continue that discussion
Oh, yes.
before bringing one of the deans in?
Yes, yeah. Yes, we would.
Okay,
Well,
like the 21st and 28th to have those discussions?
yeah, we have
Do you have another dean recording?
the 21st, but then we are estimated to start having deans come in on the 28th. We could look at that further though and talk about whether or not that would work well. But
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
can't change my calendar on the 21st, but I can certainly get those to you.
okay. Well, thanks everyone.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your evening.